Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 20th of June, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. My co-host today in the studio is Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And journalist Mark Anderson joins us by video link from the United States. Now, later in the programme, I'm going to be covering the assisted dying bill, and both Mark and Patrick have updates on what's been made public from the recent Bilderberg conference. But we're going to begin today with Iran, of course. And Patrick, the situation is not being de-escalated in any way.
Not at all, Mike. And it looks like, we'll bring up on screen, it looks like this is what we are looking at. And it gives me much pain to say that, especially since we all have very vivid memories of 2003 and the run-up to the Iraq War, and how much people were shouting and screaming and who knew that this was an absolute scam being run by the Bush and Blair regimes, and yet the governments didn't listen to the people. And for this reason, it's almost like a repeat. But let's look at where things are at right now. So this is what the White House put out just yesterday. So Trump basically saying he's approved an attack on Iran, but's holding off on giving final orders. So basically, the president saying Trump's deciding whether to join in the Israeli strikes on Iran within 2 weeks. So he's saying, I'm deciding over the next 2 weeks whether to jump in or not.
But did he approve them or not? Or is he doing it or not? It seems to be ambiguity between the headline in that article and the text you put on screen there.
Complete ambiguity. And so this is what we have with Trump. The policy flip-flops and swings every 12 hours, it seems. And who knows what he's going to put on his social media account. So total chaos here. So that's what he's saying. Now, do you believe Trump? I mean,
no.
Has he built up a rating of credibility with things that he has said and things that he's done?
No.
I'm going to have to say absolutely not. I don't trust Trump. So this looks like a ruse. And a clue to this may be from the recent post from award-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. We'll bring this up on screen here. What I have been told is coming in Iran, and this is what Hersh has published in the last 24 hours. He's saying here quite clearly, this is a report on what is likely to happen in Iran as early as this weekend. So the window for attacks, according to Hersh, is late evening time, United States, East Coast Standard, up until Monday. And he says, according to Israeli insiders and American officials I've relied on for decades, it will entail heavy American bombing. And he goes on with just another important detail, the longtime U.S. official in Washington who told me that all will be, quote, under control if Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, quote, departs, a.k.a. regime change.
But it's actually much more than that. It actually means dead.
It means dead, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when he says they've already attempted to kill him at least once already, the Israelis, and so the Americans believe that they can, quote, finish the job, as it were. And it doesn't end there. We'll just look at this here. When we go back and just check out what has been said, talk among White House planning groups that include J.D. Vance, vice president, of installing a moderate religious leader to run the country. But Israel demands a political puppet. So Hersh is insinuating here there's a difference of opinion between the Israelis and the United States about what type of regime change needs to happen. So you see, they've already created a sort of sub-debate to get the media to argue about what is an appropriate regime change. So we've gone all the way from no new wars, no wars in the Middle East, no more forever wars, to, well, we need to defend our allies Israel, and then Iran shouldn't have a nuke, and now it's Iran can't have any enriched uranium, and now it's Iran must submit to full surrender, unconditional surrender, otherwise we're going to, bomb Tehran and evacuate Tehran and so forth, and now it's regime change. So opinion polls, Mike, on regime change in America are not looking good for the MAGA base. And there's been a lot of talk and things published and commentary to that effect. So there is definitely a split. This is not popular with Trump's base. Not at all. And so let's look at the other side of the Atlantic in Israel. And this is the debate in Israel. Again, how to kill Iran's leader. And this is Israel Katz. He's the defense minister, basically saying that Khamenei cannot continue to exist. So he's calling for the murder of the Iranian leader. So, I mean, They're still pretending like there's some possibility for negotiations here. I mean, this is the crazy part. And so we have this meeting coming up in Europe. Let's take a look at this. This is happening right now as we speak in Geneva. European ministers are holding emergency nuclear talks with the Iranian Foreign Ministry today, according to sources. And it's being led by what's called, Mike, the Troika. The Troika. So who are the Troika? UK, Germany, France, plus Kalliakalis. So I guess not quite.
Well, the Europeans, they need 3 presidents. They need a troika, but a troika is 4. So how does that work?
Yeah, in Europe, 1 + 1 + 1 = 4.
Right.
It's not meant to make sense, Mike, but that's what Brussels is all about. So what are the chances of peace between these artful dodgers here, Keir Starmer, Friedrich Merz, who's already basically said, we're here to do Israel's dirty work, and then Emmanuel Macron, who quite frankly doesn't know whether he's coming or going. He doesn't know which way the door swings on a good day. And Kalliakalis, well, she is basically a war hawk. So I'm not holding out much hope for this. Now, what do you think this is about here? And this is the question with this one. I don't know what they're actually up to here. I'm very skeptical. I think that this is inconsequential. I can't imagine what leverage any of these Europeans will have on either the United States or Israel. They've been totally supine when it comes to Netanyahu, to the genocide in Gaza, and to the unprovoked war against Iran. An illegal war of aggression. The very thing that they're, up in arms and raising Cain with Russia over in Ukraine, they've got nothing to say about Israel. And not only that, but they're talking about, Israel wants to assassinate the entire Iranian government. They've already done half the government on the first day of the attack. They've killed all the top officials, half of them. So, I mean, this should be a crisis moment. So the question is, what's Europe going to do here? That's the big question. What can Europe do here? And I'm not convinced. It almost looks like this is a distraction, because you have to remember, they're all working in concert with Israel. All of these people are diehard Zionists. They're totally in the tank with Tel Aviv and Netanyahu, and they can't do anything, I think, to sway Donald Trump. I can't imagine what leverage does Europe have.
Europe doesn't have any leverage on this, as far as I can see, and I mean, this is a very good question. They're putting on a front, but is this just good cop, bad cop exercise going on, do you think?
Well, if you consider, Mike, what Seymour Hersh has published there, wouldn't this be a nice distraction to try to, they think they can lower the guard of the Iranians and then come in hard with a bombing campaign on the weekend? Because isn't that what the United States and Israel did already with the nuclear talks? In the 6th round of talks, they managed to, we reported on it last week on this program, that Israel's plan was to lull the Iranians into complacency while planning a surprise attack. Now, do you think the Iranians will fall for that twice? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. So we'll see where this goes. Now, former labor leader Jeremy Corbyn, Mike, is somebody that could have been prime minister. He was ousted by the Israeli lobby, by the deep state, by the intelligence services, and certainly the United States was part of that effort, along with the Tory party, of course, and Rupert Murdoch, all happily worked together to oust Jeremy Corbyn. Now, he has been doing a lot of interviews, and he's been doing sterling work on the floor of the House of Commons. And I really can't imagine who would be a better leader of the Labour Party at this very moment in time if it's about preserving human life and world peace. Here's a video clip of Corbyn just laying out just one important aspect of this whole story that seems to be missing from the mainstream coverage.
Why do you think more hasn't been made of Israel's nuclear weapons?
Because fundamentally, the media narrative on most global channels is essentially pro-Israel, despite the genocide findings, despite the continued occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, despite the deaths of, 60,000 and more people already there. Somehow or other, that's now parked, and we're now into what Keir Starmer and David Lammy call legitimate self-defense. Secondly, it was only dragged out of Lamy during persistent questioning from Richard Bergen and myself that he acknowledged that, reluctantly, that Israel actually has nuclear weapons, is not an adherent to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty or to the Global Ban Treaty. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. How do I know that? Because for once, I believe the CIA when they reported to Congress in March that there are no nuclear weapons in Iran.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
Powerful. Corbyn, listen, Keir Starmer, ousting of Corbyn, the imposing of Keir Starmer on the party, it seems like a coup at this point. It honestly does. But what the end was Tulsi Gabbard, that's the Director of National Intelligence in the United States, stating unequivocally in her assessment, the entire intelligence community's assessment in March, Iran does not have a bomb and is not working on a bomb. So that should be the policy of the United States government. But that's not what Donald Trump said when he was doorstepped by a CNN reporter on Air Force One. Listen to this.
But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
So
where's he taking his advice from? From the DNI or from somebody else?
Could be someone else in his ear. Could be Lindsey Graham. It could be the Israeli lobby. Could be Jared Kushner. Or it could just be that's what Donald Trump thinks. And to hell with the intelligence community. He just threw Tulsi Gabbard under the bus. He threw his DNI, who was confirmed by the Senate, under the bus. And they're trying to paper this over in the media to say, oh, there's no daylight between them and all of this stuff. So Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard. And this is what Ray McGovern has said here. He says, memo to Tulsi Gabbard, resign. Trump has trashed the last vestige of independent intel analysis. Don't lie. You are, quote, not on the same page. Leave lying to Trump. He knows Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. Go public. Americans have a right to know this. That's Ray McGovern, head of Veterans for Intelligence Sanity there in the United States. And so this is what the media has kind of dived into this here. And this is what they're claiming anyway. In the eyes of the Trump and some close to him, Gabbard was warning him not to greenlight the Israel attacking Iran. Trump even expressed his disapproval to her personally. The three people said, so three sources close to the author here, the authors of this Politico piece here, and they go on. Gabbard insisted to reporters Tuesday that she and the president are on the same page on Iran. And the persons close to Gabbard denied any tension between her and the president. So that's the public line. What's the reality? I think there is a difference. But then again, this could all be theater, Mike. With Trump, this could just be sort of fake opposition, WWF wrestling to make it look like, oh, he has a restraining voice in the cabinet. It's Tulsi Gabbard. She's a peacenik. And she released a video about the Hiroshima bombs a couple of days before on June 10th that seemed like very out of character. Maybe it's legitimate. Maybe it's genuine. But if it is genuine, she needs to resign. Right. And go public and say, this is wrong. This is going to lead to nuclear war. I mean, that would be the right thing to do for her, seeing that she's been thrown under the bus by her own president. Or she could play it safe, or this is just all theater, Mike. It's all theater. Who knows? Time will tell.
Time will tell. And Mark, let me welcome you to the program because something that was announced a few days ago was the sailing of the USS Nimitz.
That's true. Good day, everyone. Listeners out in UK column land. Hello, guys. Yes, the USS Nimitz, about a 50-year-old aircraft carrier, reportedly is going to be rerouted from Asia to the Middle East. And there are various concerns across left-wing, right-wing, centrist websites, so many it's incredible, that the Nimitz will be, quote unquote, the next USS Liberty. And the thinking is that it's an old ship being prepared for being decommissioned, which evidently will cost up to $1 billion to fully tear down because it's a nuclear-powered ship. And so the thinking is that why not put this derelict out there? Israel might pull off a false flag and attack the ship, and that would much more solidify and justify getting the U.S. involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran. So in other words, will history repeat itself? That's the huge question being asked. And it's ironic that this came out right about the time that my interview with Phil Turney, the USS Liberty survivor, was released on UK Column News. And we're showing that screen here, the screenshot from the article, the interview that's now posted at ukcolumn.org. And we can listen here momentarily what Phil had to say about why he felt that the USS Liberty was attacked, what the ultimate motive was, and then relate that again to some of the theories and concerns about the Nimitz. So let's go ahead and go with that. It's incredible to me, given what you described, that they can still try and claim that this was a case of mistaken identity when we both know better, as do your fellow survivors, and that evidently, and correct me if I'm wrong, they wanted to sink the Liberty and blame it on the Arab forces during that 6-day war in the Mediterranean. That was the evident goal, correct?
Yes, that was the goal, Mark. And we were probably set up a year in advance to have this happen. It was all pre-planned. They wanted to sink our ship, blame it on the Arabs, and get us into nuclear war. We had sacked aircraft on the way to come bomb Cairo even before we were attacked. The aircraft were in the air. The aircraft were in the air even before we got attacked. So Lyndon Johnson, Levi Eshkol, the Prime Minister of Israel, and a handful of others in both governments did this, and to get us into World War III. That was the whole plan. They wanted all of it. They wanted all the land. What's going on now in Gaza wouldn't be happening right now if our ship would have sunk. They'd have taken it all then. With the help of the United States, they'd have got it all.
Yes, indeed. Interesting stuff. So, of course, the parallel that's being considered is that the ship would be attacked, the Nimitz would be attacked by Israeli forces and blamed on Iran, thereby to escalate the war, possibly pointing toward, heaven forbid, something approaching World War III. At any rate, there's various sources, including the U.S. Naval Institute news here, that have confirmed that the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz is sailing to the Middle East. There was even an earlier article, I don't know if we still have that slide, even back in March, before the conflict reared its ugly head. There was already news that the Nimitz was going to be decommissioned for practical reasons. And at any rate, this national interest item came up, and it's a very kind of strange article in the way that it's written. They're claiming to have solid knowledge, absolute reliable knowledge that no, the USS Nimitz will not be destroyed in a false flag operation, which is pretty ridiculous. It goes on to say baseless social media theories, they say, claim the USS Nimitz will be sacrificed in a false flag attack, but experts dismiss these as fear-driven misinformation amplified by viral algorithms. But all the people who are concerned about this are saying is that, like with the Liberty and the Maine in Havana Harbor that sparked the Spanish-American War, Pearl Harbor, World War II, Gulf of Tonkin, Vietnam, they're simply saying that there's historical precedent for false flag operations to start major conflicts. So for someone to say in advance, proactively, that this won't happen is really quite ridiculous. There's really no way around it. And that same national interest piece happened to cite, and there's so many things that could be cited, but it happened to cite this X piece by a James Lee. Many know Israel mistakenly, quote unquote, attacked the USS Liberty in 1967. Fewer know, he claims, it may have been part of a CIA Mossad false flag op called Project Cyanide to spark regime change in Egypt. With the USS Nimitz headed to Iran, you have to wonder, is history repeating itself? So that's the widely asked question right now, guys. Not a ridiculous question at all, as the national interest so wrongly implied, but a very important thing to pay attention to. And it's just ironic this came out right when my interview with Phil Turney came out, which, by the way, is getting a lot of reads right now, probably more than it normally would have received. So that's good news in that sense. So back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, the question is, can they actually, even if they had this planned, can they actually pull it off now that this conversation is happening quite as publicly as it is?
I hope it would make a difference if indeed that is one of the sort of nefarious plans in the back pocket of these two bad actors, the United States and Israel, also Britain and its allies too. We can't leave NATO out of this. But
right.
So where's Russia on all this, Mike? That's the question. Russia has vested interests in Iran. They have strategic partnerships, economic plans together. Vladimir Putin is irate. He's doing shuttle diplomacy. This is a take from a meeting which happened just in the last 48 hours. This is Vladimir Putin talking about Russian specialist scientists that are currently working at the Iranian nuclear sites. Listen to this.
И были эти контакты. Я думаю, что завтра, послезавтра будут. Мы продолжаем наши отношения. Это первое. А второе, я уже об этом сказал. Наши специалисты работают в Бушере. 250 человек. И еще командированные. Общая численность может достигать 600. И мы не уходим.
And just to clarify, Patrick, he's talking about 250 there at the moment. It could be 600 in the future, but we're talking about civilian nuclear research here, and nobody has ever suggested anything except for, of course, Britain, the EU, and the United States.
Not research, engineers who are building, working on the maintenance and building of the reactors, because it's an Iranian joint project. So Russia's not happy. They've got a contract with the Iranian government, and basically he's saying they're not going anywhere. So he's kind of throwing down the gauntlet. He has made private communications with the Israelis. Let's take a look at this. Just to reiterate where Vladimir Putin stands here, we'll bring this up. As you know, Russians picked up where the Germans left off in Brochure. Our specialists work there, more than 200 people. We have an agreement with Israel that they will not be targeted. Okay. So, I mean, do you trust the Israelis? I don't know in this case. Given Iran's plans to develop a peaceful atom, we could continue working together and help them in this. We discussed it with the Israelis and the Americans. We could fulfill Iran's needs and thus lift Israel's concerns. Well, they already did that. Following the U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA, Iran nuclear deal, a perfectly good deal that Trump tore up because he was instructed to tear it up by the Israeli lobby. It's as simple as that. And Russia then offered to basically come to the rescue, if you remember, after that, to handle the Iranian themselves, to do that sort of deal independently under international oversight. Right. It was a win-win. But the United States, Donald Trump, in his first term said, no, we won't accept that. There's going to be no deal. And they continue to put sanctions on Iran, at the same time also increasing sanctions on Russia. That was Trump 1.0. So that's where things stand there. So who knows? I mean, this is a very, very delicate situation for the Chinese and for the Russians, but I don't think they're able to intervene militarily at the moment. That's just way too dicey, but they can help in terms of supply. And I certainly...
So you don't see this as an effort to bring Russia, effectively bring them into a second conflict and weaken them in Ukraine, for example?
No, I don't think so. Although Russia could strategically put assets in Iran as a marker, much like they did with Syria, limited assets. But already they're in the driving seat in Ukraine. Right. And if the U.S. attack Iran, they can kiss Ukraine goodbye. It's over at that point. Russia's already moving in heavy on Odessa. We'll see how that goes. But so this has also brought up the debate in the United States, Mike, about the United States' relationship with Israel, the Israeli lobby's relationship with congressmen and senators. And there was an interview with Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is the Zionist in the Senate. He is the arch Zionist. He's also the right hand of President Trump. He's also a Bible-thumping evangelical, okay? Tucker, I mean, this is the most extraordinary interview. He really put him on the spot on, the Israeli lobby, IPAC. Why is a foreign lobby not registered as a foreign agent? And Cruz was just doing evasive action, rearguard action, the entire interview. It was a beautiful interview by Tucker Carlson here. We'll bring Ted Cruz up on stage. We'll call this Tucker versus Ted Cruz. And Candace Owens, a popular conservative commentator and YouTuber as well, she released just a short on her YouTube channel that kind of sums this up, and it's absolutely extraordinary. It includes a small clip from the Tucker Cruz interview. Let's listen to this.
Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Well, hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what? Hold on. Define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yet nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the descendants
God's
of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is.
And I'm really happy he said that, because when you hear it, you realize how ridiculous it sounds. Even if you're not following the theology, if you don't identify as a Christian, you realize that you have a senator that is sitting across saying that his number one reason, he didn't say one of the reasons, he said my number one reason that I support Israel is because the Bible commands me to do so. And just so you know, the Bible does not command, and this is what Tucker Carlson is getting to in that clip, it absolutely does not command you to support the modern state of Israel. Like Genesis is pointing to the modern 1948 created state of Israel, and you must support it, despite the fact that it is very much involved in what can only be described as demonic behavior since its creation, right? And so you're going to ignore every other biblical passage. You're going to misinterpret this one. It's a dispensationalist heresy. Dispensationalist heresy, which was factually funded by the World Zionist Congress. And we can do another episode on that as I present to you guys all of the evidence that what it guided the notations. This really stems from the Schofield Bible, the heresy of the Schofield Bible. Schofield himself was an absolute fraud who got funded and was overseas and alleges that he wrote all of these notes in the Bible and is telling people how to read their Bibles. The first time that notations were put underneath the passages. So this is what Genesis says, and this is what it means. And this is how this heresy arrived in America. Then somehow this guy is able to, it becomes the most printed book, and Oxford Press gets behind it because like a random pastor. You get the idea here. It was very much a funded effort to have Christians misunderstand the Bible. And Ted Cruz is one of these Christians.
This is extraordinary. So this really takes the mask off. You can see a religious fanatic, Ted Cruz, saying the Bible commands him and all Christians to support Benjamin Netanyahu and the state of Israel. So according to Ted Cruz logic, Mike, if I, let's say, had a son, I named my son Jesus, does that mean the Bible commands all Christians to worship my son as the Son of God? I mean, it's just utterly ridiculous.
I think that should you have a son and call him Jesus, that he would be more closely related to the Christian Jesus than the current state of Israel is to any biblical entity.
But
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's the literal translation or subjective translation and perversion of religious scriptures and texts. And that's the problem with extremist fanatical Christianity, Zionist Christianity, and that's the problem with extremist fanatical Zionism. So that's why they go together so perfectly. How can this be forming policy, foreign policy, war policy? I mean, this is, I dare say, this is biblical, but the level of deceit, the lying, the support for a genocide has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus Christ, in my humble opinion. Right. But that's just me. Maybe you have a different opinion. Feel free to weigh in the chat box.
Okay, and that takes us to House Republicans, Democrats moving to limit Trump? Is that actually going to happen?
Well, this is an ongoing effort. We've got a number, over 30 co-sponsors, I believe. This is Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, a Democrat and Republican, a joint effort here to basically stem the tide of this executive branch of Donald Trump. And this is what Thomas Massie tweeted here. Most Americans do not support U.S. involvement in Israel's war against Iran, which begs the question, why doesn't more of Congress oppose it? Literally no one campaigned on another war in the Middle East. So this is true. Well, this is a gap between the public, Mike, and our elected leaders. Once again, we see this strange phenomenon where the public doesn't reflect, their views aren't reflected in the leadership here. And in America, the answer is right here. This is basically the explanation here. The 2024 election was clearly not won by the Republicans or Trump. It was won by AIPAC. Israel won the 2024 elections. You see the black dots in the middle? That's AIPAC. You see the Republicans in the blue, or in the red, and the Democrats in the blue. Those are the two parties. So you have a giant Israeli uniparty owned by the Israeli lobby, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get those black dots. Trust me on that. So that's the issue there, Mike. So I mean that's about all we have to say on this topic as well. And yeah, I mean we can throw up here the map of the Middle East, and these are all U.S. bases within firing range of Iranian rockets. And those will all become targets if the United States decides to bomb the Iranians this weekend. And if that happens, all bets are off. How are you going to be able to contain this conflict? I'm not sure. But I don't know, do we have time for the...
No, we'll keep the Tony Benn video until extra, if that's okay.
Okay, well, if we have time, sure. Yeah. It's former MP Tony Benn, the great Tony Benn. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, this week then the Royal United Services Institute held their land warfare conference, and they'd had keynote speeches from Secretary of State for War John Healey and Chief of the General Staff Sir Rolly Walker. We're allowed to know what these two said, which can be boiled down to Russia, Iran, kill them all. That's basically what they said. But RUSI says that the Land Warfare Conference, quotes, brings together senior land and ground forces leaders, policymakers and experts from the industry and think tanks to discuss and debate the dangerous security challenges that we are currently facing, that the UK and its allies are currently facing, and that will, quote, explore how the land forces can increase their combat power by leveraging new methods and capabilities to increase their lethality, enhance their survivability, and regain maneuverability. So the question is, what are these new methods? Well, AI, of course, is right up there, and so it's perhaps no surprise that the so-called gold sponsors of the conference include Helsing, a defense technology company providing cutting-edge software and artificial intelligence to protect democracies. That makes it sound really great, doesn't it? And Palantir, the world's leading software platform, these are their words, for data-driven operations and decision-making. Their silver sponsors include ARX Robotics, which focuses on the digital transformation of land forces and the development of autonomous unmanned systems. And bronze sponsors include Stark, a, quotes, technology-driven defense company delivering the systems that Europe and NATO need now, including unmanned systems that are designed to meet the realities of modern conflict, AI-enabled, software-defined, and ready for affordable production at scale. But as the Times reports here, RUSI was forced by the Starmer regime to issue a statement on reporting restrictions in place at the conference. So speeches from John Healey and Rolly Walker, as I said, were allowed to be reported upon. But speeches, for example, by Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton, the Chief of the Air Staff, who's expected to become head of the armed forces, and General Sir Jim Hockenhull, the head of Strategic Command, could not be made public. There were no restrictions on reporting on military leaders from foreign nations. So that meant that if people were on a panel with a UK-based military leader, everything could be reported about what that panel said, except for the UK guys. It's quite incredible. Now, this has been described as unprecedented interference from Downing Street. And RUSI said in an email that they sent out on Monday, quotes, "We wanted to clarify a late change in reporting rules relating to speakers from the British Armed Forces, which differ from those which have been applied in previous years and which also differ from the printed brochure. The majority of speeches and panel appearances by British personnel will not be for reporting, whereas those by individuals from foreign militaries will be. So this, as I say, absolutely unprecedented censorship of what is effectively, okay, you've got to pay to buy a ticket to it, but it's effectively a public event, and it's normally widely reported on, and they normally stream or at least make recordings of the speeches and put them out afterwards. Why is the British regime doing this at this stage? This looks very much like because they are preparing for war, and they don't want some of the comments from some of these military leaders becoming public.
And corporate defense contractors. So the merger of government and corporate interests. This is just fascist behavior, and I'm not saying that flippantly.
Right.
It is what it is. So why Chatham House rules? If we're just talking about the quote defense industry, well, it's not the defense industry. It's the offense industry.
Absolutely. Okay, if you like what the UK column does, please head over to the UK column website and click on the box at the top of the page for helping us out. Your help is absolutely needed and very much appreciated. And thank you again to everybody that is a member, has joined again recently or joined recently. We do need your support. Please continue that if you possibly can. Tonight at 7 p.m, the weekly banter with Charles, myself and Jerm will go out on the usual live stream places, and we're talking about immigration and national identity tonight, so that's potentially controversial. A reminder of the date for your diary, which is Saturday the 18th of October for the next UK column on location event in York. Health is a topic, or health-related topics will be the main theme, and you'd be very welcome to come along to that. Tickets will be on sale very soon. We will have more details of this shortly. The Sounds Beautiful Festival is taking place next weekend in Wimborne in Dorset. UK column will be there. And I'm glad to say that the Facebook competition has been won for 2 free tickets to that. And the winner is Mattman on Facebook. So I'm sure the guys will be in touch very shortly to help you out with that. A quick reminder of the Don't Let Geoengineering Go Over Your Head event, Picnic in the Park, which is happening in Hyde Park tomorrow at 2 p.m. And Sonia Poulton will be live streaming that as well. But get along to that. I think the weather's going to be very pleasant for that. So get along to that if you can. And coming soon is that Andrew Bridgen will be at the 7 Stars Hotel in Totnes on the 25th of July, 7 p.m. Doors will be opening at 6:30. Get along to that if you possibly can. Not to be missed, as it says at the end there. Okay, let's come on then to assisted dying. And of course, MPs are debating and voting on the final stage of the assisted dying bill today. And the question is the assisted dying bill going to be euthanized? Well, if Kim Ledbetter and her supporters win the vote today, the bill will go to the House of Lords for consideration. If the vote is lost, that will end it for now. But in November, if you remember, MPs voted to back the bill, and that went to the next stage, and they voted by a majority of 55. Now, Ledbetter says she's confident the bill is going to pass today, and she may have grounds for that confidence because that 55 majority was larger than expected, and most consider it unlikely that 28 will have changed their minds, although some clearly have. There have been amendments to the bill, and some of these will be voted on today. And of course, the main amendment is that instead of having a court having to approve an assisted dying request supported by 2 doctors, it'll be decided by a panel consisting of a lawyer, a consultant psychiatrist, and a social worker. Other amendments include a requirement for any doctors assessing assisted dying requests to have gone through training on domestic abuse, including coercive control and financial abuse, as if that's going to make a difference if somebody's particularly interested in pursuing that kind of agenda. And another one, making independent advocates available for anybody that might be experiencing substantial difficulty in understanding the processes. So that is going on at the moment. We wait to see what the final result of that is going to be, but it's looking like it might proceed to the House of Lords. we'll see. Let's move on then. And Mark, let's bring you back. And some more information is coming out on Bilderberg since the conference ended. What have you got for us?
Well, this is firsthand information, pretty much my own research across the board. I was looking around at some people whose names are not real common at Bilderberg and looking at the economic angle, since I mentioned Congressman Jason Smith in last week's report, head of the Ways and Means Committee, they write the tariff laws and so on. I thought, well, what else economic might have happened? And there was a speech, and we'll show this here, by the European Commissioner Maria Albuquerque for the high-level conference on European financial integration. We've talked before about European central banks integrating and fiscal integration in the EU over the years. Well, this is more of that. Advancing the Savings and Investment Union, very important, jointly organized by the European Commission and the European Central Bank. And what I've got here on this is that this was on June 12th, just before Maria Albuquerque left Portugal, where she's from, and went to Stockholm for Bilderberg. And this speech, of course, would be of particular interest to some of the other attendees, which included the Bank for International Settlements GM-elect Pablo Hernandez, World Economic Forum President Boris Brenda, and the Eurogroup President Pascal Donahue, as well as the European Investment Bank President Nadia Calvino. And Maria Albuquerque also noted that financial integration could not be more relevant. Today's discussions on the eve of Bilderberg are centered on the Savings and Investment Union, or SIU, and she says the political momentum is behind that. Now, they're talking also about a more power-concentrated single supervision of the Savings and Investment Union, and so on and so forth. And what they're saying is that this would help shore up the more fragmented capital markets in the European Union compared to the U.S. capital markets by tapping in or leveraging or somehow using the savings of Europeans, typical everyday Europeans' bank account savings, to put financial muscle behind this.
Mark, sorry, just so that I'm understanding this. Obviously, in the 2008 financial crash, we saw Greece and other countries experiencing bail-ins and people's money effectively being nicked in order to shore up the failing financial system. We're talking about a formalization of this process.
It does look that way. It smells like that. It remains to be seen a little bit. But yeah, there was those negative interest rates. There were people in Cyprus having their bank accounts siphoned. And at that time, the viceroy overseeing the Cyprus situation was a longtime Bilderberg attendee, Joseph Ackerman, out of Germany, a banker, we may recall. At any rate, Maria Albuquerque revealed something very interesting in that report that I cited the title of a moment ago. At the end of 2023, EU financial assets totaled 34.5 trillion euro with a T, which sounds totally amazing to me. I thought maybe it was a typo, but that's what she wrote. Household financial assets in the EU, totaling 34.5 trillion euro. Of that, around 11.5 trillion euro sits in cash and low yield deposits. And there's no surefire way of knowing whether EU citizens, will directly benefit from this. Would they get an investment prospectus in the mail saying we're going to invest your savings money this way? And is it going to be totally voluntary? These are some of the questions. Would they actually get dividends? Would their money bring returns? Or would it be something much more underhanded, like you mentioned a moment ago, Mike? And the publication GIS Reports, which is more or less an impartial journal, also expressed some concern about this, as highlighted in the European Commission's competitiveness compass. The EU will require an annual investment of up to 800 billion euros by 2030 to modernize what's called its chronically distressed economy. These figures stem from a September 2024 report by career European banker and past Bilderberg attendee Mario Draghi, which underscored the urgency for groundbreaking innovation across the board. And so it does appear highly possible that European citizens' savings could be pilfered in some way to shore up these fragmented capital markets in the EU and to help EU meet its investment goals, its investment future, you might say, with regards to all the defense spending that it's being called on to make. So that this is something very, very curious, something that deserves very close attention. Now, there's another aspect of this concerning Congressman Jason Smith. I got a letter back because when you see the Bilderberg attendance list, you have to keep in mind that that's more of the invitation list. It doesn't necessarily confirm that everyone actually showed up. But Bilderberg wrote me back saying, as it shows here, Congressman Jason Smith did indeed attend, as mentioned in the participant list that was published, and EU Commissioner Maria Albuquerque also attended as listed. I wanted to make sure of that because this Savings and Investment Union thing that I cited was announced in Portugal right before Stockholm became the site of the 2025 Bilderberg meeting. Moving on from there, it's interesting also that Jason Smith was there along with the EU counterpart in a way, Maros Sefcovic. He's the EU Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, as we show here. As I noted, Jason Smith from the 8th District of Missouri chairs the House Ways and Means Committee, trade laws, tariff laws, customs regulations, things like that. Well, they met under the same roof. And after that, Sefcovic, who had already been to the United States more than once this past spring, he spoke to the American Enterprise Institute, you might recall, while AEI, the Enterprise Institute, sent a emissary to Bilderberg this year. From Bilderberg, Sefcovic went over to Alberta, Canada, to the G7 and met with Jameson Greer, the trade representative of the U.S. On the side. And he also met with Greer earlier in the year when he visited the U.S. And Robert Lighthizer, who was Trump's trade representative during Trump 1.0, he was also at Bilderberg. And at any rate, what appears to be happening is that with a July 9 deadline being imposed by the Trump administration, the transatlantic allies are rushing to clinch a deal before Washington hits the EU bloc with tariffs of up to 50%, 50%. And Trump's import duties would affect about 70% of EU exports to the US. So it appears that's why Jason Smith was mainly at Bilderberg, to talk with Sefcovic and provide input and collaborate a bit so Sefcovic could go to the G7 and try and stem the tide of these tariffs affecting a lot of EU imports going into the US and doing that at the G7. Now, another dimension of this, of course, is accountability. And Jason Smith, I did a pretty in-depth search. There seems to be no indication that any of the Missouri media, either newspaper or broadcast, they appear to have no idea that their beloved congressman went to this elite confab in Stockholm known as Bilderberg. And something like that happened in 2018, which is the last time I was in the UK. John Hickenlooper, the Colorado governor, went to Bilderberg, and he got cited by the State Ethics Commission. And 2025 is the 5-year anniversary of Hickenlooper being cited by the Ethics Commission in Colorado precisely for attending Bilderberg, among some other misdeeds. And here's a little bit of what that report had to say. Hickenlooper had paid $1,500 for travel and lodging, but he also enjoyed luxury accommodations that were far beyond that cost. He should have realized that he was receiving a gift from Fiat Chrysler, the sponsor. There's one other call-out quote from that report, if we might show that. The commissioners, the Ethics Commission report also said, unanimously found that Hickenlooper had violated the gift ban with his attendance of the Bilderberg meetings in Turin, Italy, and that was again in 2018. So the all-important question now, as I'll show here, come to find out Missouri also has an ethics commission, and I've already placed a call to them and some of the Missouri media to see if they're going to take an interest or at least see if they're already looking at Jason Smith's participation at Bilderberg and whether something similar to what happened to Hickenlooper might come down to ensure some accountability here. So there'll be much more to report on that very soon.
Thanks, Mark.
So back to you guys.
Yeah. Patrick, what have you got on this?
Well, on the Bilderberg front, if you're looking for a good sort of wrap-up, a good review of what happened at Bilderberg, a great summary, along with original photos as well, we've got this up on 21stcenturywire.com, a review of Bilderberg 2025, AI, Drones, Technocracy, and the Transatlantic Alliance. This is by journalist Hannah Borno, and this is up on our website right now. Fantastic summary and analysis, as well as naming all the names and what everybody got up to, and some great photographs as well from her and some of her colleagues. So we've got that up at 21 Wire. And as it goes, this is another article that people, I think, need to also take a look at here. And this is on The Guardian. This is by Charlie Skelton, who's been covering Bilderberg for a very long time as well. China haunts Bilderberg talks as usual suspects plot world domination. This is a fantastic article, and it just shows you the pivot towards Asia, along with all the fifth generation total warfare, the AI, the drones, etc. So if you really want to kind of get a good sort of rounded scope of what went on and what this meeting really has been all about this year, those are two articles I highly recommend. Hopefully we'll have those in the show notes.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Now let's come on to the issue of propaganda. And the government media complex continues to promote the war narrative, of course. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. First of all, we have the Mirror here, making sure we all know that, first of all, World War III is coming, and that when it arrives, conscription will be a thing. So this whole conscription narrative continues to sort of rumble under the surface without any admission that it's actually going to be a thing. But apparently, according to the Mirror, if you're a baker, a farmer, a doctor, a nurse, or an engineer, you'll be all right. Although I suspect the latter isn't 100% safe. But in the meantime, gov.uk is very excited to tell us that the nuclear bomb is great because jobs are a thing. So new figures, they say, reveal that 1,500 skilled roles have been created at in the last year at the UK's Nuclear Weapons Technology Centre, AWE. And they claim to have carried out a study which shows that people working on weapons of mass destruction receive 20% above the UK salary, the average UK salary. So that's good news. They decided to announce this alongside what they describe as a landmark £15 billion investment within this parliament to renew the UK's sovereign nuclear warhead. And this was confirmed through the recent Strategic Defence Review to keep, they say, the British people safe while supporting almost 10,000 UK jobs, because don't forget, the first role of government is to keep people safe. Now, Lisa Nandy was a guest on this morning's BBC Today programme, and at the end of her segment, she was asked about the pro-Palestine protesters who broke into RAF Bryce Norton this morning, and she couldn't help herself. She described these protesters as being irresponsible and hoped the full force of the law would be imposed because national security is so important, and quotes, the first role of government is to keep people safe. This has become a term of sheer propaganda. We're hearing it everywhere now. We got to keep people safe. That's the role of government. That principle began to be rolled out with COVID. It's now being continued through the various conflicts that we're seeing around the world now, and it's being used to justify this increased defense spending, which is actually war spending, and just sheer propaganda.
It's total Orwellian inversion. So activists wanting to stop the UK from sending weapons and defense parts to Israel, who is committing a genocide, literally slaughtering tens of thousands of women and children and innocent civilians, that's somehow keeping people safe by clamping down on those concerned citizens who are doing basically, civil disobedience, I think is probably the right word for it. But no,
Mark was talking about accountability. What they're doing is attempting to hold people to account, but they don't want to be held to account. So prosecute them, put them in prison instead.
Oh, they'd love to delete the word accountability from the great digital archives of humanity once the opportunity arises, and replace it with chutzpah. We'll
Absolutely.
leave it there.
Yes. Well, look, on screen at the moment is Sir Richard Moore, the current head of the Secret Intelligence Service, otherwise known as MI6. And as I mentioned on Monday's program, he's to be replaced by Blaise Machiavelli later this year, I think at the end of September. Now, the Prime Minister has appointed him to be the next chair of the Kennedy Memorial Trust for a period of 5 years. For those who don't know, the Kennedy Memorial Trust was established in 1964 to administer money raised in the United Kingdom as a tribute to the late John Kennedy. Whatever Britain's role was in his death, maybe it's some kind of exercise in trying to absolve themselves of responsibility in some way. But anyway, part of this fund was used to create and maintain the Kennedy Memorial Site at Runnymede, and the rest is used to provide Kennedy scholarships, which enable British postgraduate students to study at Harvard and a Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now, the recruitment process for trustees, of which Moore is now one, of course, being the chairman, this recruitment process is run by the board of the trust and approved by the Prime Minister. And in this case, the recruitment panel was chaired by Marianne Sieghart, who's a senior independent trustee of the Kennedy Memorial Trust, apparently. But of course, Marianne is also a journalist. She served on Ofcom's board in the past and written for the Times and so on. So she's a pretty establishment figure as well. Anyway, getting back to Richard Moore, he has a BA in philosophy, politics and economics from Oxford University. And on leaving Oxford, he won a Kennedy Scholarship. So isn't it appropriate, therefore, that he has now become chairman giving out these gifts? So he then went off to the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. And then in 2007, he attended Stanford Executive Program. So, Patrick, what is this? Is this a UK equivalent of the Rhodes Scholarship Program, Deep State in Action, grooming its next generation? Is that what this is all about?
Yeah, or the Chevening Scholarship Program run by the British embassies overseas, or the British Council. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a career path. And by putting the head of intelligence in charge of that program, that's talent spotting, grooming, and getting people prepared for a position in the deep state. So maintaining the transatlantic Anglo-American shape that is represented in confabs like Bilderberg and others. So that's exactly what it looks like.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's leave it then with this story, because I mean everybody has seen the headlines over the last couple of days as we've been experiencing relatively warm temperatures for the UK at least. But you know, the BBC here is typical. Temperatures to hit 32°C again as heat wave grips UK. Now, this article, if we're talking about war propaganda, this is absolute climate propaganda, because if you read through the text of this, it's got the usual stuff about wildfires, about how we're all going to die and so on. And although the headline is a little less sensationalist than others, it's absolutely reinforcing this propaganda narrative. So look, let's look at this then. This came out from Sky yesterday. Amber Heat health alert issued across England with rise in deaths likely. Read more, right? And now I strongly recommend everybody goes and looks at this Twitter thread. If we just put that back on screen, I'm going to show a couple of the responses to this, but this is just two of the more polite responses. So here's one. Nobody's going to die from 30 degrees heat. Calm down. Fair point. And another one here. Not gullible enough to read more. It's summer, you worthless idiots. And those were the politest of what is on. There are hundreds and hundreds of replies on that, basically telling Sky News to wise up. Because
highs this weekend, Mike, 24. I just checked the weather report. Where are they getting this 32 for this weekend? Or is this sometime in the unknown future? Is that
no? I think there's probably a couple of places around the country where the temperatures have been a little bit higher. But even so, the British people spend hundreds, if not thousands, of pounds every year getting out of this country to go to Spain, to Portugal, to Greece, to experience 30-degree temperatures.
Yep.
And so they don't die in the process. Now, many of the tweets in response were highlighting the fact that actually the number of people that die from the cold is orders of magnitude worse in this country than those who die from heat stroke or some kind of heat-related illness. So, it's ironic that we are being force-fed this kind of propaganda while, elderly people and people living in poverty continue to literally die during the winter from not being able to switch the heating on in the house. It is quite an incredible situation.
Remember Frank Butcher and Peggy, 2 weeks in Benidorm? How do you say beans and chips in Spanish?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Well, look, we got to leave it there for today. Patrick, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. We will be back in a few minutes if you're a UK Column member for some UK Column News Extra. Stick with the live stream. Otherwise, have a great weekend. We'll see you 1 p.m. as usual on Monday. See you then. Bye-bye.